things and reach for things, you know. Eugene used to talk about the fact that a baby will reach for the moon. It's no idea just how far away it is. That is something which we have to learn, to separate our field of vision into distance as well. And that takes time. And these are all things which are forming very rapidly. A lovely joke, a copy of Cosmic Consciousness published in 1960, a nice hardback copy. And it was worth noticing just, it's one of the, by the original printers, Duttons, the publisher's Duttons, and it's got a list of the reprints, and it's been reprinted virtually every 3 or 4 years since 1901. So it's been constantly in print, out there. So it's a very influential book. And I think it is, most people would say nowadays, you wouldn't class it as a scientific book, although for 1901 he is bringing science to this subject, organising it and ordering it in a completely, in an almost sort of biological way. He's following sort of a genus of this particular type of thought form, this consciousness, and he's sorting it out in a very deliberate sense. The things he accepts as evidence nowadays we would require a great deal of qualification in. But that broad sweep is really quite something. And I'd like to draw your attention to on the song sheet, page 3, which is, you have to turn sideways, unless you've got a very strange ocular arrangement. And if I may, I'm sorry that the print is small. I should have been able to get it larger than this, but I haven't. And he's talking about cosmic consciousness here, and he's talking about the way it is being described and named, which to me is, this is what allows so many of those characters that we've seen as being experiences of illumination in through this door, because of course some of them are actually talking of a dual personality, particularly Shakespeare in the sonnets. He's writing his poems to somebody. Now, most people consider, and this is part of the big controversy about Shakespeare, as to whether it was to a gay man, or whether it's to a woman, or whether it's to a companion, or whether it's to a patron. What Bucke says, well, if we say he's actually talking to himself, and it's either his ego talking to his cosmic conscious self, or his cosmic conscious self talking to his ego, you have a different concept of what's going on. And when you consider that the sonnets are thought to have been written over a period of about 20 years, it's more consistent that it would be like that. Rather like the Rubaiyat, which sounds like he's chatting up a lady, could actually be talking to a spirit, in the Jungian sense of talking to the other half, which balances his whole psyche, the animus and the anima. If you read the Rubaiyat, the Sufis often refer to the beloved as being the other, the enlightened self, and they call upon it to come and join them. You know, love the bread, the jug of wine, and thee beside me in the wilderness, beloved. That sort of thing, which can sound like a picnic, but it can also sound like a meditation.
An invitation.
It is an invitation, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. Right. So, page 3 on its side. The faculty itself has many names, but they have not been understood or recognized. It would be well to give some of them here. They will be better understood as we advance. Either Gautama himself or someone of his early disciples called it nirvana because of the extinction of certain lower mental faculties, such as the sense of sin, the fear of death, desire of wealth, etc., which is directly incident upon its birth. This subjugation, excuse me, I have problems reading this as well. This subjugation of the old personality, along with the birth of the new, is in fact almost equivalent to the annihilation of the old and the creation of a new self. I have a friend who some of you may have come across, actually, called Tony Peake, whose theme in life is to actually constantly talk about a daemon that we have inside of ourselves, a higher self, which enters into our situations often with information that we cannot possibly know and helps us sort our life out. If you could see that in the same context of what Bucke is talking about here, that would be the level of self-consciousness which is starting to pick up information that's coming in from this highest level of consciousness, which appears to us like a separate self because it's coming in with information that we don't know where the source is coming from. Okay? The word nirvana is defined as the state at which the Buddhist saint is to acquire as the highest aim and highest good. Jesus called the new condition the kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven, because of the peace and the happiness which belong to it, and which are perhaps its most characteristic features. Paul called it Christ. He speaks of himself as a man in Christ, of them that are in Christ. He also calls it the Spirit and the Spirit of God. Spirit is an old word for consciousness. Now, Eugene used to use the word spirit often. And it wasn't until I realized that he meant it in the context of consciousness. That essence which is there, which is like a flavor in the background constantly supporting, that's how he meant it. The spirit moves. When he said spirit moves, consciousness moves. It's a catalyst. It makes things happen. It pulls things together. It draws things into situations which are not there, you know, in the material situation, but it organizes them into geometrical, logical structures which are far more complex than you could possibly imagine coming from that material situation. Tolley talks about flowers and diamonds being sort of a synthesis of materials which outshine the material that they come from. They have such an essence to them that they are beyond the chemistry. They seem to act beyond the chemistry that constructs them. And in that sense, this is how the meaning of the word spirit. It's a distillation of matter. As I know. Jesus said, Spirit of God. And Paul, after Paul had entered cosmic consciousness, he knew that Jesus had possessed the cosmic sense, and that he was living, as it were, the life of Jesus, and that another individuality, another self lived in him. This second self he called Christ, the divinely sent deliverer, identifying it not so much with the man, Jesus, as with the deliverer which was to be sent, and which had been sent in his person, who was both Jesus, the ordinary self-conscious man, and Messiah, the herald and the exemplar of the new higher race. This duplex personality of men having cosmic consciousness will appear many times as we proceed, and will be seen to be consistent and prominent, a constant and prominent phenomenon. Thank you, prompt. Muhammad called the cosmic sense Gabriel, and seems to have looked upon it as a definitely separate person who lived in him and spoke to him. Dante called it Beatrice, making happy, a name almost and quite equivalent to Kingdom of Heaven. Balzac called the new man specialist, and the new condition specialism. Whitman called cosmic consciousness my soul, and spoke of it as if it were another person's. Okay? I don't wish to go any further in that, but if you see the way Bucke does, that this translation of the different words to cover the same meaning, so that Tolley sort of says, well, if you see that when Jesus talks about spirit, he's talking about the same thing that the Buddha means when he says emptiness.